Hi Lifespan class, my name is Amy Horton and today I'm going to teach you about how your identity is affected throughout your life. So first off I'm going to give y'all a little overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. The first thing I'm going to cover is what is identity. Following that I'm going to go into factors that influence a person's identity, then the importance of understanding your identity and how you could enter into an identity crisis, and then I'm going to conclude my presentation. So let's get started. So first off, what exactly is identity? Well, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, identity is defined as the distinguishing character or personality of an individual. So what does this mean? This definition seems kind of serious and doesn't really hit the point. So I'm going to talk about it in a different way. So actually, according to the textbook from Sandrock 2016, identity is a self-portrait composed of many pieces. Honestly, they can be pretty much anything. Some of the biggest influences of identity are shown on the right in the picture. Some of these pieces of identity include culture, your social norms, your religion, your gender, your education, your social class, your sexuality, your experience, your age, and even laws. So, what are some of the ways that influence your identity in a more personable or individualistic way? So, these are just some of the factors that influence your identity. I think these are some of the most important and the ones that influence us the most. So, gender is the first one. This one's pretty obvious. Of course, your identity is influenced based on your gender, whether you're a male or female or other. Another influence of who a person is their job title. This influences your identity and how people perceive you, and then later on how they're going to treat you. So, for example, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you're going to be perceived differently than that of like a waitress or a teacher. Religion is also a really big influence on how your identity is developed. Really, regardless of what your religion is, your identity depends on how you respond and act in regard to your religion. So, the next one is education. This is a significant identity influencer, especially for us as college students. Being given this opportunity to really make something of our lives and to go and receive a further education is something to really be proudly identified with. We all know how stressful and hard college can be, but we're all still here and we've all made it this far. So honestly, you really need to be proud of your college education identity because not a lot of people get this opportunity. The next one is location. It's another really obvious influence towards your identity as a person. So, a person, for example, from Texas and a person from New York are going to have very different viewpoints on pretty much everything, especially since Texas, we have things like Whataburger and HEB, and they have stuff like, I don't know, Times Square or something. This really proves how much our identity is shaped by where we are located and, really where we're wanting to go in our lives. The next one, and I think this really influences us as people, is relationships. This doesn't really specify on your sexuality or your family or your friends or simply who you are. Really, your identity is influenced by the relationships that you have with others. So, for example, being a brother or a mother or a sister, a grandma, an uncle, a friend, a lover, or even an ex lover, maybe even your roommate or someone you saw on the side of the road. You name it, it's just another identifying factor of who each and every one of us really are. And lastly, I think one of a more important factor that influences your identity and one that's often overlooked is your body image. This is a really big identity influencer. So, whether if you're size 2 or 22, body image really plays a role in not only how you perceive yourself, but how others perceive you. So our body is our identity, and the way that we choose to make it look, whether by its clothes, your accessories, the haircut you decide to have, if you shave your body, if you don't shave your body, pretty much size is all up to how we want to portray ourselves. And all of these things, though they seem like they may not be important, they're just some of the pieces of our identity, some of the pieces that make up our identity. So, what is the importance of understanding your identity? Well, without your own individual identity, you'll just fall in with those around you. So, being your own original person is a huge effective understanding and pretty much basically choosing your identity. Without the knowledge and understanding of how those things around you can change who you are, you're never going to be able to really understand why or how you are the way that you are. When a person doesn't understand why or who they are, they fall into what is known as an identity crisis. So, an identity crisis, defined in the textbook on page 279, as a period of identity development during which the individual is exploring alternatives. So, pretty much, this means that a person who's going through an identity crisis is not really able to pick one identity to maintain, but rather they kind of go through multiple in trying to figure out who they truly are and understand who or what changes throughout your lifetime and how your identity changes throughout your lifetime. So, in conclusion, although we're constantly changing and becoming more aware of everything around us, our identity is also constantly changing. Throughout our lives, we go through multiple identity crises where we kind of have to figure out who we are or who we want to be. As new high school graduates, for example, you kind of had to decide whether or not to further your education or end your education and end your entire identity as a student. As single people, you must decide whether you want to enter the identity of being someone's partner. And then, with that, partners, you have to decide whether you want to become a wife or a husband one day, and then mothers and fathers later on. So we go through a lot of changes throughout our lives that test our strength and adapt and change our identity, but it's up to us to decide who we want to be and how we choose to identify when those circumstances test us. So these are all ways that you're able to see how your identity changes throughout your life. So, yeah, hope you learned something.